Hey there, and welcome to The Lab, the series where we tap into the minds and strategies of top-performing EXP agents to uncover what's really working out there today. What you're about to see isn't just a great conversation, it's a sneak peek of what's inside EXP University training. All of our major training programs like Fast Cap, the Lead Generation Series, Fast Attract, and more are built by conducting dozens and dozens of these interviews. Think cutting-edge tactics, proven systems, and agent-tested strategies compiled from multiple agents on a given topic, all building into insights shared in our training and right here. Consider this your front row seat, and let's dive in.
Sure.
Brittini Bowers, Phoenix, Arizona. How did you get into real estate?
Yeah, so funny story. I feel like I've had a lot of different lives. I actually used to own a learning franchise back in the day. I did that for a while. My husband's been in real estate for about almost 20 years now. After I closed that business down, I was kind of confused, like, what am I going to go do, right? And I had a lot of talents, and I wasn't ready to jump into real estate yet, but I did actually apply for a position at a local brokerage. Well, I would say local, but they're actually national. It was HomeSmart, and I worked there actually at their corporate office in Scottsdale for about 5 years. My husband was also used to be a realtor there, right? And after a while, he's like, man, I feel like whatever you're doing for them. I worked in affiliated business arrangements, so working with titles, lenders, all different vendors, trying to advertise to our agents. And he's like, man, I really think that you could take your skills into our business and we could blow up. He was getting really busy. He was a solo agent, didn't even have a TC. So I ended up joining with him. I really liked his lifestyle. I was like, man, he's getting to do everything fun every day. He's getting to have lunch somewhere. His day is different all the time, and he had all this free time. Little did I know it was kind of disguised, right? No one has free time in real estate, but it just appears
brief moments.
Brief moments of free time. Yeah. So I ended up joining him, and we doubled our production in 1 year. So it's just been a really cool journey. We found EXP in December of 2021. And it's just been an amazing journey ever since then. So
yeah, I want to ask you too, when I've taught the two-step listing system to agents in the past, and by the way, I'm agnostic. If you want to do it in one, great. If you want to do it in two, I know a guy who does a four-step listing system, right? Yeah. He has 4 meetings before he gives them a price, and it works well. The guy's crushing it, right? Yeah. So it's not a question of whether or not it will work. I wonder though about your level of anxiety when it comes to competitive listing appointments. Mm-hmm. Is that a factor for you at all? Because I know a lot of agents, when they consider two-step listings, they're like, I don't know, why would I leave it to chance? Why wouldn't I go for the signature there? Are you getting the signature and then on the listing agreement and then working on the price later, or are you waiting for the price agreement to then get the signature?
Yeah, I will. So I'll kind of give you an overview of what I'm including, where I'm pulling the data from. And then I can always, I don't know how much time we have today, but I can always do like a deeper dive into it. Just because I do like to show people like where you can access all this information. And the good thing is that almost every realtor across the country can access this because of the tools that I use. The showing activity might be a little different, but we'll kind of discuss that. So yeah, so let me go ahead and start. So the very first thing that I'm doing, let me make sure you can you see my screen okay?
Yeah. And by the way, I've got 37 minutes. Is that going to be enough time?
Yeah, I can wrap it up in 37. I might not get into all the nitty gritty details, but I can definitely wrap it up between there.
Okay. Do as much nuance as you can. Here we go.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so we are going to start with, this is called RPR. So every agent has access to this through their MLS, which I think is so helpful. Now, if you haven't ever used RPR, definitely get into it. But here I'm going to show you one thing that you should be using on every single one of your listing appointments that you go on. Even if you're just doing this research ahead of time, it's a really good way to see what's going on in your market. Now, RPR will also share not only on-market data, but off-market data as well, which is why I like to use it, because it's very helpful for anyone that is trying to really get a whole overview of what's happening. So here's what RPR looks like. Now, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this research tab. I could also, by the way, do a whole thing on RPR. Like, that's how powerful it is. I feel like there's always new things that I'm learning on here, but we're going to start with residential market trends. Okay, so we're going to click on that. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to input into here the zip code that your property address is in, that you're looking at. So this one that I'm going to use for an example today is in Goodyear.
Okay.
So in Goodyear, what it's going to do is it's going to come up with, first of all, market trends, right? So it's going to outline what kind of market we're in. Now, this is month end data, right? So this is for April 2025. We will get May data usually the first week of June. So it usually comes out between the 4th and 7th of the month. So at the time when you pull it, it might not be fully updated yet, but this is still good enough to kind of watch trends, which is really what we're doing, because you're getting a lot of the pricing from the comps, but this is going to help you watch trends. And this page alone shows so much value to the sellers because they don't have access to any of this stuff. So here we can see in Goodyear that this is a balanced market, and we're actually creeping closer and closer to a buyer's market. Again, this is why it's so important to do this, because we hear all these generalities all the time. It's a buyer's market, it's a seller's market. This is actually going to hone in on the zip code and see what's actually happening. So the very first thing I start with is I show them, if you click here, it'll show a map of the zip code, right? Now, the reason why I like to do that is because oftentimes, and I'm guilty of it too, like you don't know exactly where the zip code starts and stops. And so it's really good for them to see, like, this is a huge area, right, that it's covering, giant. Mm-hmm. So I always like to show them just so they have an idea of where this information is coming from. And so I'll kind of click out of there. I'll say, hey, this is where your zip code is. This is what we're going to focus on for this data piece right here. I then go ahead and discuss the months of inventory. So I explain to them like this. We have 6.31 months of inventory. Now, what that means for you as a seller is that if there were no more inventory that hit the market, it would take us a little over 6 months to sell with the current buyer demand that we have at hand right now, which is important information for them to know because that's not the information that they're hearing, right? And this is also known as absorption rate too. But it's just kind of, I like how it simplifies it here as months of inventory. We then have our sold to list price percentage. So sellers are able to retain right now, as of the month of April, 99.3% of list price. Now, I tell them too at this point that this is not, from their original list price. This is from their current list price. So there still may have been some price reductions, but they're able to retain about 99.3%, which is actually very good because a lot of other zip codes that I'm watching is like 94 or 96%, which is a huge chunk of change off, right?
Yeah.
Next, it's going to be median days on market. Pretty simple and self-explanatory, but I do like to explain these trends, right? So this is actually went down 17% from last month, which is pretty unique because a lot of these are growing in a lot of areas. And then we have our median sold price. Now, talk track somewhere on the median sold price. And I already know at this point, like what price range they're roughly in. So if we are above the median sold price, I typically tell them we're working with a smaller buyer pool, right? Because most buyers moving to this area are expecting to pay somewhat around this price. If we're working below or at the median sold price, we're usually working with the largest buyer pool in the area. So I like to explain that to them too, because if I know we're actually priced at $750, that's kind of unusual for this area. So we're not going to be working with as many buyers as we think. So our months of inventory actually might be slightly higher because we're working at much higher than the median sold price. Also, one other thing I forgot to mention is that if it is a single family home, I usually will click just single family home and I'll apply that to all charts. So some of these numbers might change slightly. I know that Goodyear has a majority of single family homes, which is why I kind of usually will leave it for this one, specifically this zip code. But if you are in an area that has a lot of condos, you would want to definitely single that out. So you're just speaking about their product. So just single family home.
Okay. So you've done your CMA already before you grab this tool, mm-hmm. and now you're just kind of orienting them to the market in general, and maybe speaking a little bit to their specificities. But you're going to dive into that in a little bit. I think you're about to show something else here with the RPR. Yeah.
So I then go through a bunch of this other data. And these are already usually pre-clicked just because I'm doing this for an example right now that I didn't have them clicked, but I always talk about number of properties. So I'm going to talk about a couple different sections. So we're going to talk about new listings. We're going to talk about pending listings and sold listings because that's all that really sellers care about, right? So my talk track for this would be, we had 233 new homes hit the market in the month of April in this zip code, which is pretty much an all-time high since 2022. So again, these are talking points that I have to have with the seller because I need them to understand what type of market that we're in. We had 233 new options come to the market, right? So we're going to be one of those 233 new options if we come next month. And I foresee it continuing to rise probably slightly just based on what I'm watching. And so this is going to be an important number that we share with them because I think a lot of times, when it's your home, it's very special to you. It's very unique. But when we have this many homes coming to the market in such a small zip code, and I say small relatively because out of that huge zip code, there's only a couple actually communities, most of it's desert. When we have this many homes coming to market, this is kind of an issue, right? We're going to start to see that inventory rise because we're not usually seeing buyer demand rise as quickly as the new inventory is hitting. So then sorry, go ahead.
And you're using these numbers to sort of set expectations as well. And
laying the playing field before we get into the comps, so that they understand like what the market is looking like for them.
Okay. And I'm assuming when you've done this like live in front of people or seen people watch your video, I'm assuming this kind of is an eye-opening thing for them to consider that, 233 competitors are coming online at the same time as me.
Yes. Yeah. But I need them to be realistic with that, because when we're talking, when we pick a price and we go on the market and we've only had 4 showings, I need them to understand that like, this is the market that I was talking about, right? We have a little bit lower buyer demand. We have a lot of options, more options than we've ever had. Now we can still sell your house, but we do have to be smart about how we do that. And so our next talking point would be to go into how many active listings, right? So there's 558 active listings in the month of April. And again, I'll show them on the chart. This is the highest it's been in the last 5 years. Now, I'm not saying this to scare them, but they have to know this information. Anyone who's not sharing this information with them is kind of doing a disservice, because then they're sitting there wondering like, well, why isn't my home selling when, I'm hearing all this stuff on the news that all these homes, are doing this and this. And well, it's because we have 558 active listings just in this area, right? And that's why I like to, again, show them that little zip code report, because it's very eye-opening to see that there's so much in just a small area. Right? This is just their zip code. This isn't even all the zip codes of Goodyear, right? This is just one zip code in the city of Goodyear. We'll then go into new pending listings. Now, this is what's good. So I know it sounded kind of like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of information, right? But here, this is the good point. So, hey, guess what? Also, in the month of April, because we're at our spring market, we had a 24% increase in the amount of pending listings. 155 listings actually went pending during the month of April. So again, anytime there's good news, I'm also hitting on that, because this is highest that it's been in a long time too, right? And since 2023, actually probably even higher. And probably since 2021, this is the highest amount of pending sales that we've had. So again, we're going to share the good news as it comes, right? But I need them to have a full understanding of everything. Then I skipped this one, and I can kind of go into why, but this is how many pending listings were left at the end of the month. So I don't do that data because it can kind of be a little confusing to them. So essentially there was 155, 30 or 20-ish, 30, 20 something closed. So there were still 132 left pending for the next month. Right. So I don't go through that because it can get confusing, but this is the next part I'll go over. We also had a 22.6% increase in our sales. We had 163 actually close out during the month of April, which again was the highest that we've seen since 2021 or 2020. So again, this is going to be really important and good information for them to see. Sellers want to see this, right? They want to see sales increasing at a really high rate. So this would be good news for them, but we still have to kind of keep in mind all the other information we shared, how many new ones came to market, and then also how many active. But the good thing is that we're actually moving in this zip code, and we've seen increases in our sales. And then in certain areas too, I will also share what's sold on public record. And I do explain to them this could be a combination of things. So this could be new build sales that actually aren't going to be reflected on the MLS if they weren't ever entered on the MLS. This could also be people moving their property into a deed or an LLC or a trust, because those technically record as a public sale as well. Because I know this area and I know this community, I know that a lot of these are probably going to be new builds because they have a lot of new build communities in this area. So again, just really important for me to share with them that there was 195 sales that happened off record, which means that there's a lot of competition, not only on the market, but also off with our new build communities coming in. And if you didn't know that about this area, then you wouldn't want to speak to that. But if you do know the area, you do know it's heavily populated by new builds, like this is going to be majority of those.
Got it. Okay.
So I'll go through, and again, I have like talk tracks, so I do it a lot more seamless than I just did it for you right now, but these are kind of all the talking points that I'll share with them. So it gives them a really good overview of what we're going to start with. Now, the next thing I go into, which this might look different in your market, but you still should have a way to do it. So we used to be on Showing Time, and our MLS actually pulled from Showing Time when Zillow bought it, and now they're using aligned showings. So
Okay.
If your state is still using showing time, you can also pull reports the same way I'm going to be doing it right now. So the other thing that I'll do is I'll click on reports and I'll go to price point analysis. And again, this should be pretty similar in your showing activity.
Brittini, are you sharing your screen right now?
Oh, I am. Yes. Sorry. Is it not sharing? Okay.
I'm still looking at the RPR.
Okay. Let me see how I can switch that. Okay, let's do this one now. Sorry, I don't know why I thought it would let me just. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is called aligned showings. So this is how we look and see how many showings were made in each zip code, and we can also pinpoint it down to different pricing too. So again, any type of showing system that you guys have in your market, you should be able to pull reports like this as well. So here we're going to click on reports and we're going to click price point analysis. Now, when I'm doing this for a seller, I'm looking at the last 30 days of data, which it already defaults to. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click bedroom count. So bedroom count, I'm going to click 3+ because I know that this house has 3+. And I don't actually do bathroom count. And here's why I would recommend that you don't do that either. A lot of times this will glitch. And I think it's because there's availability in the MLS for 0.5 or like 2.5. And here you can see it's only 1, 2, or 3. So because of that, I actually don't like to filter by that because data will actually become missing from there. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to enter in the zip code. And then I'm going to put roughly their price point. Now, again, because I already know this price point, I know it's going to be between $400 to $450. And I'm going to generate the report. Now, what it's going to do is it's going to tell me how many appointments were made in between all of these different price points. And the reason why I like to share this data with sellers is because it's actually going to teach them where the buyers are in real time. So here, this is a really moving area, which is like some of these other areas I'm looking at, they do not have this high of showing rates. But it's telling us exactly how many appointments were made between each price point. Now we can see that the highest appointments that were made were between this 410 to 420. So that they're getting about 6.5 appointments per listing. Now, the 400 to 410 is actually getting 7.5 appointments per listing. And this is per month, right? Because we looked at the last 30 days. So this is going to give us an idea of what to expect when we come to market, how many showings we can expect per month. So again, it's just really helpful information for the seller to see, because if we're priced between, 420 to 429, we're maybe only getting about 2 to 3 appointments per month. Now, that's also because you got to know your area. I know that there's majority of the houses priced between here. And so there's a lot of competition. So the houses aren't getting actually as many between each particular listing. But I also know that this price point right here also has a lot, and it's a little bit more affordable, right? So they're going to be getting the highest amount. So you'd have to still know your area, but this is going to be really good data points for you to share with your seller on how much they can realistically expect in this market. I also think that it's important to say that we don't price homes according to this data, right? This is just something that we're going to use once we're listed to see how many appointments are we capturing week over week out of how many were made in our price point. And that will tell us what we need to do with our price. So for example, if we have a listing and we got 0 showings this week, but we know that there was 20 something showings in our price point of $10,000, this would be something where the buyers are not seeing a value match for our price point because they did not choose to come and look at us, right? So we may need to adjust our pricing because of that, but we don't do initial pricings based off this. Like I wouldn't tell a seller, oh, well, we need a price between 410 and 420 because that's where majority of the buyers are, right? This has anything to do with comps, condition, or anything, but it will tell us where the buyers are in real time. And then once we're listed, this information becomes even more important because it will tell us how many we're capturing out of how many appointments were made. And there's a lot of agents that don't even know that this information exists, because I was just talking with an agent last week and she's like, yeah, I've been calling all the surrounding listings and like trying to get a hold of like how many showings they've had. And I'm like, well, you can pull that information up, right? And she's like, I did not know that. So I showed her how to do that. She's like, wow, this is so helpful because now I can see that actually there was only 3 appointments made for the whole $50,000 price break that I was looking at. And so no wonder we didn't get any. There's hardly any buyers out there, right? So it makes it helpful for you to also deliver information on a weekly basis to your seller, which I think is important to do as well.
I like the fact that you've set the tone right up front with them with correlating price and showing activity, because when you don't have showing activity, they don't correlate it with the price. More often than not, they think it's your fault, not necessarily theirs for putting your back against the wall and getting us at a price that's going to be harder for us to get activity. And so I really like the subtext that you have going here of sharing this data. And you're right. Most agents don't share this kind of data during their CMA. They're just looking at pendings and solds and, running the price per square foot and things of that nature. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, so the next thing I'll share, and I actually use one other report. I'm not going to share it here because I know it's specific to Arizona, but it's called the Cromford report. And so I actually use that information for a lot of different things. But one of the main things I look at is seller concessions per month. And I can also tailor that down by zip code and also by price point. So I do share that information, and I'm going to share with you now our seller net sheet and comps that we go through. This is the last piece of the data that I share on this video, so that we can actually see, the whole thing wrapped up. But some of the data I get for seller concessions is from that report. But I believe that you can also pull something similar from MLS, if you wanted to. I just don't personally do it because I use Cromford for that. So, but they get all their data from MLS. So I know that there's a way that you can pull it. I just don't know how to tell you today. But okay, so here's one thing that I want to show. And this is going to be, let me restore this real fast. Okay, so this is going to be our seller net sheet and comps. So they also get this in the video, but then they'll get this version attached to them as well. So let me start with the comps page. Now, this is something that's probably going to make a lot of realtors like bug out with their eyes, because I actually hand import a lot of these. I do use ChatGPT to help me create the spreadsheet, but then I'll format it. I have a template that I use, which I'm happy to share with anyone, by the way. But I do have this on a template, and so I'll import the information. But these are all the comps I've chosen, right? And the reason why I choose to show it to them like this, and this I think is the biggest game changer. And if you only did one thing, I would say do this, right? We send links, or we send, MLS papers to our clients and show them comps. When they can see it like this, it changes their mind so drastically, and it really helps them actually dive into the data, because you're actually comparing one by one in a way that's really easy to read. I think we expect our clients to know exactly how to read an MLS plano, and they don't know how, right? And it's very confusing to click back and forth from one listing to another and really make comparisons between their home and all the other ones out there. So I actually like to put it in a spreadsheet, and I like to break it down like this. So I will have our active, our pending, and our closed. I have their price and I have their original list price. Now, again, the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm trying to tell a story to this client on what's going on, I'm trying to show them how many have made price reduction. So anytime it's red, it's because they've made a price reduction from their original list price. Okay. So this is really important for them to see, because if we do have to make a price reduction, I want them to already see that this is very common in this market. And then later, when I'm going through the different pricing strategies, I will come back to this and I'll show them examples. Like this one has been on the market for 368 days. They started at 475. They've only went down to 462. So do we think that they probably did a push price, right? The buyers are not seeing the value, and they've hardly come down at all, right? This is all going to be parts of the story that I'm telling. This one, 152 days, 549. They're now at 519. They probably still need to be lower because, they're still not probably getting the traction that they're looking for. So these are all going to be things that I'm telling a story of. Now, I'll also tell this story, right? And again, they'll be able to see through, I do have links in here too that I do send them if they want to come look at the pictures, but I'll usually pull a couple of the model matches, the exact model matches if there are any, and I'll click through some of those pictures just so they can get a really good grip on price. But it's important for them to see all of this that's going on. And also all these different price ranges. You'll see that there's some in here for 700, some for 519. This area is a little unusual, and there's also golf courses. So there can be a very similar house that's just extremely overpriced because they're on the golf course, right? So I do want them to see all of that, but I think it's a really good visual for what's still on the market, what actually went pending, what prices went pending, and what prices are we closing out at. And then I also have down here whether or not it has a garage, how many. We have a lot of areas in Phoenix that have carports, so it's very important if you have a garage. Also, as we get to some of these like nicer areas, a lot of them will be 3-car garage, they're worth more. I also have whether or not it's been updated. So I have full remodel as an option, a new build, partially updated, or no. And then also whether or not they have a pool. Now, again, a lot of people might be like, well, if my client has a pool, I'm not showing them anything that doesn't, right? And that's not my thoughts at all, because I think in this market, buyers have more options than they ever have. And I think actually for a nicer house, they'll give up a pool. And I know that because some of my buyers are doing that, right? So pool isn't such a hard filter like people think it is. So I want to show them an all-inclusive what's happening in your neighborhood and what are the people with pools getting versus the people that don't, right? And they're probably going to get a little bit higher square footage, right? Like a 260 versus a 240 without a pool. So we can still make adjustments for it, whether or not they have one. But I think also in this area, there's a lot of views. So there's golf course views, there's mountain views. There's some that actually don't have any house behind them. It's just a beautiful mountain like my client. So that's still worth something, even though it's not a pool, right? People still like that. They like no neighbors. They like a view. They like the mountains. So there's a lot of things that I include on here where maybe you wouldn't traditionally think to do that, but it's important, right? I usually go about 200 square feet below, 200 square feet above, just so that we can really get a full comprehensive view of what the market looks like in their area. So that's kind of why you'll see a little variation in my comps, but this is really going to be super important because they need to understand like what options buyers have out there, and they have more than they ever have. Then another thing that I'll talk about too is on the closed listings, I do make a point to go over what seller concessions the buyer ended up getting from the seller. So this is going to be, again, important information that they know that this is happening still in their market. So this one was originally listed at $450. They had to go down to $399 and they gave $12,000, right, in concessions. So this is important because if their area is heavy on concessions, which not every area is, they need to know because they need to be prepared for that in their offer. Doesn't mean we can't counter it out or I can't negotiate it out, but if it's happening more than 70% of the time, there's a very real chance that we're going to get that on an offer when we get our offer. So I need them to be prepared for that, so that they're not like, Brittany, why didn't you warn me about this, right? I think oftentimes we're afraid to discuss certain things with our clients because we're like, oh, it's just too much. It's like, no, they need to know all of these things because when it makes that conversation that much easier when you get the offer. So
yeah, well, and that's when we typically wait to have these conversations and say, no, it's commonplace after they freaked out and didn't expect it and they were blindsided. And so I love the fact that you're not only telling them up front that that's a very real possibility. I mean, what is that? 4 out of the 6 sold comps have given up significant seller concessions.
Yeah.
But you've even given them dollar amounts so they can have a sense of, oh, okay, that's not out of the norm here, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also important too, like if we look at these square foot averages too, even if we know like these are not all going to be true comps if they have a pool or they don't, and you have to make adjustments. But let's just take a look at the trends, right? 256 is the average price per square foot for active. So they have not sold, and that number means nothing until they sell. Yes. 235 is the average for once they're under contract. And we know as realtors that they probably didn't get this, right? Probably not in this market. This one probably for sure didn't. So this is going to be something where, this is just what they were. And I tell that to the client when they went under contract. Once they close, we can see what they actually got. And there are often times where I will have that number because I've already called that agent and asked if they would share it. Then there's going to be our close comp. So 228, right? So you can see like everyone's priced really, really high, but keep in mind the story that I told earlier that there's 500 something listings on the market, right? So everyone's priced high up here. The ones that are actually selling are priced more accordingly. They still might not get that full price. And then the ones that are closing out are more realistic to this. So we just have to like wrap the whole story in one when we're talking about these comps, because this will actually help us have better conversations with our sellers.
Okay.
And if you ever wanted to learn an area, when you do this, you're going to be like an area expert by the end of it, because you're like, oh my gosh, like I know so much about this area. I know all the comps, I know all the data. And I use this information too when I'm making offers for my buyers, because oftentimes I'll go in and say, hey, this is where we're priced at. This is why. Give them data, because I'm not talking to the buyers. I'm not talking to the selling agent. I'm actually talking to the seller. I want them to be able to literally forward that email to their seller and have the explanation of why we came in where we did. Because I think if you can make those conversations easier for that agent, you're more likely to get accepted.
I mean, more often than not, you've got somebody who's relatively inexperienced on the other side of that
Yeah.
co-op transaction. And yeah, if you're not giving them the scripts, then you don't know whether or not they know how to position your offer to their clients. So I
Yeah.
love that. And you're sharing the video with them as well, or you're just sharing some of the comps when you send an offer?
No, I go through it just like I did with you, and I'm actually talking about all these comps on here. Oh no, with the buyer, no, with the selling agent. No, I'm not actually. I'm just giving them talking points. So I just like bullet point the information. Sorry.
Okay, great.
My sellers are going through all of this. Yeah.
Okay. And so you go through the spreadsheet here, and I like the scripting a lot. Anything else you share on this?
No, not really. I mean, we'll talk about a little bit more. Like, I think when we looked at this data, it was 44 days on market. True comps are average 109 days, right? When I really tailored it down to their home. So I will talk about that because I don't want them to think that we're going to sell this house in 44 days, right? I want them to be a little bit more realistic if it does take longer, and maybe it doesn't depending on their pricing strategy. And what's good is like this one just went under contract. So I'll actually tell you what we got. But so for seller net sheet, and I'm just going to delete this here because I don't want to talk about commission, but I'll kind of explain to you what I talk about. Okay, so here's our seller net sheet. You can see this screen, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So I give 3 different pricing points. And so when I'm going through this, I say, okay, here's the 3 different price points that we can do, right? Or we can do a mix in between, but here's kind of how I laid it out for you. Now I start off by saying anything in blue is a negotiable item. So anything in this bright blue is going to be something on the contract that they can ask for. Does not mean that we're going to pay it, but I will tell you what's probably going to be realistic based on the age of your home and what's happening in our market. So like I mentioned during the Cromford report, I know that 74% of sellers in March, and keep in mind I did this in March, so I would have had May data, but this was sent to him previously, paid a median of $12,817 in seller concessions. Now you can see from our comps, it's actually a little bit lower than that, right? So we can maybe expect somewhere, but I want them to aim high, right? I want this to be a higher inflated number, because if we can negotiate this down, or if we can remove it altogether, or maybe add it in by increasing list price, this will go away. But I do want them to be prepared that we should expect this on an offer, because 74% of sellers paid it in the month of March. And this probably did go down for April, but this is something that they should expect. Next is going to be title insurance fees. And I do explain to them, I do have this tailored out from actually a title company that we use. I get these estimates for them. So it's actually true to like this purchase price. I will then explain to them that in this market, it's almost rare. It never happens that buyers will actually pay for sellers' closing costs. So this should be a term that we expect to pay ourselves. Next one is a home warranty. And I actually don't put a home warranty in there, and I explain to them why. I see this in less than 10% of the contracts that come through my office. So I just don't really plan for it, because it's pretty rare to see that. And then I have this credit in lieu of repairs. Now I explained to them the buyer's going to do a 10-day inspection period. After the inspection period, they can ask for certain items to be fixed. They can ask for a credit in lieu, or they can decide that they want to move on, right? And so I tell them, based on the age of your home, his home was built in the early 2000s. So it's coming due for a roof. His AC is original. They're all over 20 years old now. So we should probably expect, now this is not going to pay for a new roof or new AC, but we should probably expect that the buyer's going to come to us, because we know that they're in working condition and we know that there's no issues currently, that they're going to probably come to us with a rough amount of maybe about $10,000. And again, this is just from my own experience. If you don't know what this number is, feel free to leave it blank, but I think it's best to have something in there as a buffer, because again, this could very, very well happen. I see this happen all the time. We have a lot of homes in Phoenix right now that were built in the early 2000s, and they're all kind of coming up with this, right? So I'm just taking an average amount from what I'm used to seeing. Now, this could be something that we negotiate lower. It could be something that we, disregard altogether, but I just want them to be prepared that the buyer's probably going to be asking for something because of this. And they know it too, right? They know their house isn't perfect. And they know that their roof and AC is probably coming due. So this is just something that's like, hey, we're getting on the same page with this right now, that this is probably going to be asked for. It's probably going to be an issue for some buyers. So let's just talk about it now, and we'll do our best to negotiate that out. You can see that my commission is not in blue, because my commission is not negotiable. The selling agent or the buyer's agent commission is negotiable, however. So I give them the average. I put in an example here. I'm not going to say it on this video, but I put in an example of what they can expect based on, again, what I'm seeing in the market. And I let them know this is now a negotiable term of the offer. So, we'll look at all the terms together and decide what's best at that time.
And I think you took it off because we didn't want to talk about commission in this video, but ordinarily in line 28 there, your commission is pre-populated and it's all set. Got it. Okay.
And it's not negotiable. It's not in blue.
I caught that script. I really liked it. That's a great way of explaining the color coding, just moving past that objection. I love it.
Yeah, that's all I say is I say everything in blue is negotiable. I then go through and I'm like, here's what we charge. We charge this %, and we move on. And I have to say, out of the 50 that we've had, I've only had one person ask, and that was only for a military discount, which we actually did give a military discount. So
I was going to ask you, does that script work? It seems like it does. That's great.
It does, because I think when people can see all the terms, and again, just keep in mind that this video for them has already been 25 minutes of me delivering value. And so when they see that, they're like, okay, yeah, that works. So I'm not saying it's always going to be like that, but 1 out of 50 isn't bad, right?
No, not at all.
All right. So next is going to be taxes. I do explain to them that I don't incorporate this as part of their net proceeds. And the reason why is because I have clients that will pay, ahead of time. I have clients that pay in arrears, how they're supposed to. So at the time, it'll be prorated, whether you prepaid or didn't, you'll get that credit or debited to you. So I do explain that to them. And then we'll go through HOA fees if it's, an HOA property, which this one is. So again, there's going to be special assessments. For example, this client is in a CFD, which is like a community facilities district. There's an extra tax on that. There's going to be HOA dues, transfer fee. Again, transfer fees, special assessments are all going to be negotiable. What's not negotiable is the disclosure fee. That's required by Arizona law for the sellers to pay. It can be up to $400. At this point, I haven't pulled and done an HOA addendum for them, right? Because it's not my client yet. So it can be up to 400, but it could be less, right? It just can't exceed more than 400. So I usually put 400 as a buffer here. And then here will be their estimated net proceeds based on each one. Now, this is so powerful. So again, do not skip this part when you're going over this with your sellers. I know this is probably the scariest part for a lot of people because you're talking about money, and money is uncomfortable to talk about. I'm telling you though, it makes the conversation so much easier. When you get that offer and you plug it in and they can see what they're walking away with, it is just like, it's so helpful. The conversations are quick, they're easy, they understand because you already prepped them on all these. We're not trying to explain to them now that, seller concessions are very common and they're like, why didn't you ever explain that before? Or why didn't you tell me that this could happen? Or why didn't you tell me that they could be asking for all these things? It's already explained, it's already written down, it's actually documented in a video so I can show them that I explained this to them. And then when they get the offer, which this one did, I can show you. So we'd actually just got the offer. So I will put it on here. And so I will show them, be like, okay, this is our list price. We ended up listing at $420. When the offer comes in, I put it side by side with everything that I prepped them for versus everything. With everything I had prepped them for, and then everything that, has come out. So we can see we got a full price offer. They asked for $8,500 in concessions, which is great because they were expecting to pay $12,000, right? We're obviously pending the inspection, so we don't know how many, repairs or anything are going to, come up. And then we did talk about our commissions, and we went through all of that. And so you can see that actually, this one, it's because I didn't put commissions in there. This one actually was lower though. This was like $370. So based on their current offer pre-inspections, they were actually netting $12,000 more. It's because I took those commissions out. So this is a great conversation because when he saw this offer, he's like, yeah, that sounds great, right? Now, obviously we explained to him, we still have the inspection to go through. So there's still roughly around 10,000 that, we prepped you for. We don't know what that's going to look like because we haven't seen the inspection, but he was very happy and we did exactly what we said. We went under contract in less than a week. So he was very pleased. So
yeah, it's almost a no-lose situation here because when you don't have the things that you've warned them might come, they're all the happier, right? Wow, you've done an amazing job. That's awesome. I'm happier. I got more than I expected. But when those things do come, well, they know it's coming. They expect it, and so they're not fighting you. And it's that old adage of putting yourself on the same side of the table with them, and putting the market on the other side of the table, and not yourself. Right? This isn't a negotiation with me. This is just the market, and let me show you what the market's saying, and let me show you the proof of that. Yeah. So you mentioned earlier these videos are typically about 25 minutes. in length?
25 to 30 minutes, depending on, the individual situation. But yeah, 25 to 30 minutes. I used to make them longer, and I actually cut that out because I felt like they would still wash them all the way, but it was too much. So I used to share a lot more on the Cromford. I started pulling that away and just sharing the two things I need to share, which is seller concessions and some other trends I share. So.
Okay. And in the video, you've got the 3 ranges. How do you talk about that in the video? Or do you send them that video and then call them to talk about the ranges? How do you do that?
No, actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I don't know why I skipped over that part. So yeah, we actually do talk about, let me go back to it. We actually do talk about the different pricing strategies. Let me go back to that page. And the different versions. And I'm also explaining to them at that point too, that I'll go back to the comp sheet and I'll explain, hey, this is the story of someone who did a push price, right? They're sitting at 268. They're sitting at 368, right? They're trying to get that price, and it's too inflated for this moment. And I might go into like those specific pictures too of that house so they can see the condition compared to some of the ones that have sold. So if there's a story to be told, I'm telling it with them. So but the main things that I explained in the very beginning is we have a couple different pricing strategies that we can go with right now, right? So we have our premium or our push price, and that's the price where you're like, Brittini, I want to kind of build in a buffer so that, in case we get a lower offer or in case we have to come down in price, we're not coming down so much, right? So I explained to them that we can try that, right? We can try this push price, but after 2 weeks, if we don't have enough showing activity, or we're not in a bunch of different portals, or we're not showing all this other data that we need to be seeing that's showing that we made the mark correctly, we're going to probably have to come down. I don't think that we should be at this elongated price this push price for an elongated period of time, because that could actually harm us in the long run. I also explained to my clients that prepping for someone to come in lower is actually not the best strategy when you're trying to get the highest dollar for your home, right? You're already prepping that you're actually guaranteeing that person is going to come in lower because they will see the comps, right? So you're actually not saving any money there. You're actually guaranteeing that you're going to get a lower offer. Next is going to be market value. So this is what I feel that the true market value is of your home. I feel like if you got an appraisal on your home today, this is where it would come in at. And so I explained that to them based on the comps that I provided. And that's, with looking at the price per square foot for other comps that have sold in their area that are comparable to their home in terms of condition and views and all the other things that we look at. Next would be aggressive. So there is a time and a place to do this. I say that, if you have, a very short time that we need to sell in, right? So like, let's say you have a new build that's closing. We might want to go the aggressive strategy, and the goal is not to sell for 400,000. The goal is still to sell for closer to market value. But what happens when you come in really aggressively, for especially buyers who've been sitting on the sidelines for 6 months and watching all this inventory creep in, watching and looking online at all these houses, when they see something of your value go on the market $20,000 below where it should be, what do you think happens? We attract the most amount of showings. We attract multiple offers, and then we can leverage those offers to get the highest and best terms. So that would be one of the reasons to go aggressive, is just to kind of really jumpstart that. And again, the goal would not to be to come in at 400. The goal would be to get closer to market value, but just with multiple people interested. And so, for example, like when we came at 420, which is pretty conservative. So all of my market values are pretty conservative these days. And the reason is because we have, just in this market alone, over 500, right? So in another 6 months ago, I might have suggested this price, right? But now where the market's at, this is kind of where we're at. And so a lot of people are still going off of, the market data from before. And I think that's where a lot of them are sitting still. We came at 420. We had multiple showings. We almost got the aggressive strategy without going aggressive. And we ended up getting a full price offer. So and it was funny because our clients like, wow, I feel like that happened really fast. And we're like, because, the marketing was there, the value was there, the buyers were there. So they've been watching and they see your value and they're like, yes, let's move on it. So it did what it was supposed to do, right? We're not supposed to sit on the market for a long time. So it actually worked out very well for him. But it's kind of funny how they're like, whoa, that happened fast. I'm like, yeah, it did, because that means the plan worked, right? So I do explain to them the different kind of like pros and cons with doing all of these, and then they get to decide. So they feel like they're in the driver's seat. They have all the information. They know that if we start here, that in 2 weeks, if we don't have the data that we need to look at, then we will possibly need to make a different move. Now, just so you know, the data that I look at, let me share that with you too on a weekly basis. This is what I do on a weekly basis for them. I'll do a little video as well. So everything I do with video, and I follow up with a phone call because I always want them to have the option to watch it back. And I just like that they know that this is the kind of level of experience they can expect. And also, again, those people that they shared it with before are probably going to wonder, like, why is our home sitting on the market? What can we do? And so with that, you know, it's very good. They can share these seller updates that I do weekly too.
Well, and look, to your point, are they going to sell right away? Maybe, maybe not. But when they do, and you've done things like this, law of reciprocity in life kicks in. And then in the meantime, especially if you're really good with your referral scripts, this gives you all the ammunition in the world to have them feel like, man, I'd really like to do a solid for Brittini if I can. Oh, well, by the way, you can, you know, and ask for the referral that way. So well done. Well done.
Thanks.
All right. Brittini, thanks for coming and doing this with us. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me.